Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Economic Times 40 Under 40. My name is Suresh Venkat and I will be your host for the evening. Now, in its 7th year, the Economic Times 40 Under 40 is the definitive list of India Inc.'s future business leaders. Now, for the 2020 list, more than 800 profiles were in contention. After a rigorous process, a long list was drawn up and presented to the jury that selected the winners. I'm delighted to share with you that the 2020 list marks a new milestone, the highest representation of women in its history. The jury that picked this year's list included Harsh Goenka, Gaurav Dalmia, Janmay Jay Sinha, Meena Ganesh, Naveen Tiwari, Rajneesh Kumar, Rupa Kudwa, Saugata Gupta and Zia Modi. Our sincere thanks to the jury for their invaluable contribution to the ET40 Under 40 program. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our presenting sponsor, the Mercedes-Benz A-Class. Also, a special note of thanks to our study partner, Spencer Stewart. Now, when we asked the people in this year's list what success signifies to them, we received a range of replies. Most said it's about making a positive impact, spreading joy, and pursuing a larger purpose, as well as helping transform the lives of people. Amidst a pandemic that turned the world upside down, several spoke about learning from their failures, but never giving up. We have a very special evening in store for all of you. Tonight, we are not only celebrating the spirit of achievement, but as you will soon see, we're also celebrating the spirit of compassionate leadership. We're going to move straight into one of the biggest highlights of the evening. Our keynote speaker, Vinod Khosla. Mr. Khosla is an entrepreneur, investor and technology fan. He is the founder of Khosla Ventures, which is focused on impactful technology investments. One of the most well-regarded people in Silicon Valley, Vinod is passionate about being a mentor to entrepreneurs and promoting social entrepreneurship. Recently, he donated $10 million to assist India in the fight against the pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Vinod Khosla.
Hello, I'm Divya Rajgopal, and welcome to the Economic Times 40 Under 40. Now, starting off the proceedings of today, we are really excited to have with us Vinod Khosla as our guest today. Mr. Khosla needs no introduction, but I'll still go here. Vinod Khosla is entrepreneur, investor, and technology fan, and the founder of Khosla Ventures, which is focused on impactful technology investments. This year's theme of Economic Times 40 Under 40 is Leading with Compassion. Mr. Khosla, I want to start this interaction today by asking you, what do you think makes a good leader during such world-altering crisis?
It's very easy to follow the herd. The leadership is about jumping in where others are afraid to jump in. Leadership, to me, is about jumping in when there's a lot of ambiguity. And that usually happens when things are changing a lot. So it's really being able to define a very clear path when others are afraid to jump in. Following is pretty easy. Leadership involves both fear and courage, because one can be fearful of the uncertainty because of the ambiguity. So I think that's my definition of leadership. The second part of leadership is getting other people to follow you. And I think that's best done if there's a set of guiding principles. Most people end up doing what others expect them to do, or they end up focusing on what others are doing. So either it's other people's expectations or others. I find critical to leadership is having a belief system of your own, an internal belief system. And so you then lead with some guiding principles that are consistent with your principles, and it becomes a guiding principle for others you're leading. So I think that's what's really important about leadership. My personal view, the world's an interesting place. There's hundreds of millions of people born every year on the planet. And speaking to your 40 accomplished people who've been selected here for the ET Awards, I would say the following. There's no more, in any decade, there's no more than 10,000 people, 100 people in each of 100 areas, whether social areas or technology or science or arts areas. There's no more than 100 people in a decade that define a field. And if you imagine 100 fields, there's no more than 10,000 people born in any decade that are going to change the course of society. There may be a billion people in a decade that come into existence, but of that, a few, 10,000, will make a real difference. And those are the leaders, and they're the ones, hopefully, who have guiding principles. So I always urge people, young people like this, to really think of, are you one of those 10,000 people? Are you one of the 100 in your field, chosen field, who'll make a difference? And whether it's pioneering new ways to address art or culture or music, or it's winning a Nobel Prize or creating a marquee business, it doesn't matter. That's what leadership is about. That's the challenge and the opportunity for your awardees.
Right. We've seen that the pandemic has altered the way how the world functions. I mean, it has shown that what bare minimum necessity looks like. What advice would you have for emerging leaders to sort of wade through these uncertain times? Somebody who's kind of starting off a business or taking up an executive position, what would be your advice will be for them?
So my advice to all leaders is, pandemic has lots of negative consequences. It's been a real disaster. But there's one way in which it's been a real boon to society. Society tends not to change very rapidly. There's real inertia in society, and we are used to doing tomorrow what we did yesterday. I call it extrapolating the past kind of strategy. What the pandemic has done is changed a lot of assumptions that people would say would never happen. If you'd asked anybody 15 months ago if medicine could be practiced remotely, they'd say no way. If you ask them if employees could work from home, they'd say no way. If you ask them about new services, they'd have we've done it this way for the last 20, 30 years kind of excuses. All that has changed. So my general view is society was very solidified and gelled, and it has ungelled. So society for the next 5 years or 10 years is much more shapeable. That's not correct English, but shaping society becomes, or molding it becomes much easier because it's not a solidified mass where you can only innovate on the edges. It's now mostly up for new models. And I think that's a bright spot of the pandemic. Much more is possible now. Much faster change is possible in every important area, from healthcare to education, to manufacturing of goods and services, to R&D around vaccines. A 10-year process has become a 1-year process. So it does create an opportunity for the next set of leaders and entrepreneurs to be much more effective in shaping society much faster.
No, absolutely. And that's what I want to sort of take it from here and ask you that what's been the journey for Khosla Ventures, in the last 15 months or so? Have you sort of, re-looked at the entrepreneurs that you invest in, the businesses that you are sort of trying to focus in? What's been your vision in the last 15 months?
Well, at a number of levels, short term, a number of our companies responded very rapidly to societal needs in COVID. So if you go to New York City, almost all the testing is done by one of our companies. This 25-person company, now it's a couple of hundred people, but it was 25 people last March, is now doing almost all the testing and more testing than all the large lab testing companies like Quest and LabCorp combined. Not only that, they've now changed the cost of all respiratory disease testing by a factor of 10. So it costs 1/10 as much to do a PCR test for 20 respiratory diseases, not just SARS-CoV-2. So that's a very positive thing. The same is true in San Francisco. One of our companies doing almost all the testing. In less than a year, we have drugs in process for COVID, protease inhibitors, which are well known in HIV, but can also apply to COVID. So there's that sort of thing. Virtual services in healthcare are much more prevalent now, and many of our companies. That then answers the second part of your question. Beyond the 1 year or 18 months, it has opened up all new opportunities because work will be remote. Healthcare can be done remotely. In fact, we're just organizing a nonprofit effort we'll be announcing soon to build hospitalettes, small little units in rural India that can be provided expertise remotely from all over the world, mediated with Indian doctors. So that might permanently change. My hope is the face of healthcare provision, ICU, hospital beds in rural India with the best expertise in the world, because you're not going to get a pulmonologist available to a hospital bed in rural India. So those things are pretty exciting. I think it's opened up a lot of opportunities. I would say in every area you look, there's opportunity. So we are seeing new kinds of delivery systems, local manufacturing. So innovation happening everywhere. So I would say the next 10 years look very exciting to me. If one can imagine the possible, and if one drops the idea, I call it what is the bane of my life, people who are extrapolating the past and say, we've done it this way, so we'll do it this way. And I think it's become much more possible, and there's a real economic opportunity in creating new businesses to invent the future we want, which hopefully is much better for the companies inventing it and for society. Just in the course of the last decade or so, we've invested in early stage entrepreneurs that have created $500 billion in wealth. That's the market cap of the portfolio of companies. $500 billion is a big number. And that can happen out of a small group of investors. You can count on your hands. I think that's possible 100 times over if everybody in the world decided to innovate and especially apply technology for the benefit of humanity.
Right. As they say,
sorry, I talked too much.
No, absolutely not. I think you made a very important point that, as they say, that never let go of a good crisis go to waste. And I think that's what perhaps we are saying. It's a crisis, but there is so much of possibility to create a future.
Yeah. I think Paul Romer, the economist, coined the term, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. I do think, and I'm an optimist, enough good will come out of this.
Right. So I want to ask you, our today's audience are going to be some of the best minds of India. And what do you look at when you invest in an entrepreneur and in a company? Beyond the term sheets, beyond the business model, what is it about that specific leadership quality that you look out for an entrepreneur when you're investing in these companies?
Yeah. Look, the press tends to romanticize startups. And startups have had a large impact, but doing a startup is very, very hard. It's very uncertain. I talked about ambiguity earlier. For those in your audience who are entrepreneurs, the highs are very high and the lows are very low. They're very depressing. They're very lonely. What do you look for? Resilience and persistence. People who will power through that. People who have a vision for the future and will follow that with a passion. So large visions are very important. I always use my favorite analogy, which is Mount Everest. If your goal is Mount Everest, it becomes very interesting. But nobody got to Mount Everest without getting to base camp first, and then camp 1 and camp 2, camp 3, camp 4, I think, before the final ascent. And none of these are in a straight line. But the visionary entrepreneurs imagine Mount Everest, and they won't climb they'll get to base camp, even if there's a higher peak to climb more easily, because they have the eventual goal in mind. So where you go may not be the best maximal revenue thing or company building thing to do in the short term. So people trade off short term for long term if they're visionary entrepreneurs. And I think that's very important to eventually building a company like Google or Amazon. I knew Jeff Bezos in 1996 and Larry Page in 97 when they were young kids with almost no operation. They had very large visions, and they were obstinate about their vision, but they're very flexible about their tactics day to day, year to year. But they never lost the path to the vision. If they had to sacrifice short-term benefits so they stayed on track for their vision, they did that. And I think that's absolutely essential. And they were true and certain of what they wanted to do, even then when they were very young and inexperienced. The flip side of it, I would tell you, is there's very few people with expertise in the area who've innovated in that area. So no large innovation over the last 40 years has been done by somebody who knew the area they were innovating. There's no chance anybody at General Motors or Volkswagen or Mercedes could build an electric car like Tesla. The big advantage was Tesla didn't know anything about building cars. The same thing has happened in space. Boeing and Airbus and Lockheed didn't do space innovation. It was startups like Rocket Lab and SpaceX. Media, your own business, it didn't come from any of the media companies. It came from Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and Netflix. It came from people who didn't even know they were in the media business. Airbnb and Oyo cabs or Uber came from people who weren't in the transportation business or the hotel business. There's no way a Hyatt or Hilton could do what Airbnb did. My point is, you need a certain culture of persistence and large vision, but not necessarily deep expertise in an area. In fact, deep expertise becomes surprisingly a large disadvantage.
Right. I think that's kind of a very interesting thing that you were pointing out, is that persistence, resilience, and not necessarily know it all about a specific subject that might, perhaps land you an investment with Khosla Ventures. So
Divya, you asked me what we look for. The thing we look for more than anything is not somebody's experience, but how quickly they learn. What's their rate of learning? And you can tell a good entrepreneur in 90 days by how quickly they take new input, learn, and refine their model. So it's exponential learning that matters more than really a lot of experience in the area.
As we wrap up, any parting advice, any message to the winners of 40 Under 40 that you would like to share?
Well, I think I've sort of been clear. There is a lot of opportunity. And there's a lot of opportunity to lead, create large businesses, do a lot of interesting things. And I would say, don't assume that any of the current assumptions are true. I'll give you a few outlandish examples. We are starting to 3D print whole buildings so they don't take as much cement and steel. And if they take 1/5 the amount of material, then they will be cheaper and they will be built faster. So I think housing and construction could see complete renovation. Things like Impossible Foods have changed the notion of animal husbandry, meat production, protein production. We are seeing transits. We just invested in a public transit company, of all things, to create a new kind of public transit. So opportunities are everywhere. My only suggestion to your leaders is to do it with vision and principles, but also compassion. That means, one, after you're successful, you feel much better if you're doing it the right way, which means you're doing it with compassion while sticking with your principles. So heart is as important as the brain in doing all this right, and feeling good about what you've achieved. It's very, very rewarding to do the right things for the right reasons. And so compassion for those who don't have this opportunity. And opportunity is not equal for sure. Some of us have much better education, much better access to resources. My last message is, it's hard. Creating large things is very difficult and hard. But I always say, not all hard things are valuable, but most valuable things are very hard. So persist through it. That'd be my parting message to people.
Well, that was wonderful message, and I think it's an apt way to sort of wrap up our interaction today. Thank you so much, Mr. Vinod Khosla. Persistence, vision, and compassion is what the future leaders should be perhaps striving for as they move on to a post-pandemic world. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.
Great to be with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khosla. As we begin our celebration of the winners, here's a quick reminder to use the hashtag ET40under40 when sharing your comments, pictures, quotes on social media. Our first winner is an entrepreneur who is an alumnus of IIT Delhi. An achievement he is most proud of is enabling over 13 million women to realize their dreams of entrepreneurship. Please join me in congratulating Vidit Atre, founder and CEO, Meesho. Our next winner believes that real success is about being able to bring defining change, building a sustainable business and touching lives. Karan Adani is the CEO of Adani Ports and SEZ. Our next winner says that the best advice he ever received is, sometimes the role of a leader is to just lean in and make others believe that what feels seemingly impossible is possible. And when that happens, magic shall follow. The winner is Varun Alag, co-founder and CEO, Mama Earth. Next up is a leader for whom achievement sits somewhere between brotherhood and fatherhood. An achievement that he is most proud of is the ability to attract a hugely talented team at work and bringing up two amazingly resilient girls at home. Please join me in congratulating Shirish Barwale, Managing Director, Mahiko. Next up is someone who follows the advice of not picking her battles but determining which battleground she wants to be in. Something to think about for all of us, perhaps. The winner is Radhika Bhalla, Vice President, Head of Emerging Asia Alliance Markets, Beatrice. Our next winner is a chartered accountant who believes success lies in spreading joy and adding value to a larger purpose. Further, he feels that a good leader is as good as his team, so helping the team win is important for long-term success. Please join me in congratulating Pulkit Bhandari, Head of Group Corporate Finance, RPG Enterprises. Next up is an entrepreneur who helps you get things done. Kabir Biswas, co-founder and CEO at Dunzo, believes that while the company has had its ups and downs, the one constant has been the sheer resilience with which it serves its stakeholders. Congratulations, Kabir. The next award in the ET40 under 40 list goes to Mithun Chitilapilli, Managing Director, V-Guard Industries. He is a firm believer in the tenet that it is people who drive businesses and success. If you can create believers and advocates out of your people, then business will take care of itself. Congratulations, Mithun. Next up is a woman who says that the one achievement she is most proud of is supporting two entrepreneurs at an idea stage. One who went on to create 3,500 jobs for low-income youth, and another who helped 22,000 low-income families build better homes. The winner is Shreya Deb, Director Investments, Omidyar Network India. Our next winner says that the best advice she ever got, and I'm going to quote her directly on this: be passionate about what you do, because when the chips are down, that alone will help you get up and start again. Please join me in congratulating Harman Dhillon, Vice President Hair Care, Hindustan Unilever. Cheers to our first set of winners. Talk show host and entrepreneur Oprah Winfrey famously said, "Leadership is about empathy. It is about having the ability to relate and to connect with people for the purpose of inspiring and empowering their lives." The COVID-19 pandemic has put a spotlight on leadership like no other crisis the corporate world has experienced before. It has been touted as the toughest leadership test yet, a test of nerves, strategy, and resilience. As the second wave recedes, leaders face the formidable task of motivating their workforce. Compassion could become the most versatile and vital form of leadership at a time like this. And on that note, we now move to a very interesting segment, one where business leaders discuss the importance of leading with compassion. I welcome our panelists: Radhika Gupta, MD and CEO, Edelweiss Asset Management Limited; Satya Pratipati, Senior Partner, McKinsey & Company, India; Sandeep Singh, MD, Alchem Laboratories; Santosh Iyer, VP Sales and Marketing, Mercedes India. The discussion will be moderated by Vinod Mahanta, Senior Editor, The Economic Times. Over to you, Vinod.
Thank you so much. Leading an organization in the last 1 year could have been the most challenging part for any leader. It tested nerves, it tested strategy, it tested resilience, it tested your inner strength. On one hand, you have to deal with the disruptions in the business. And on the other hand, there were humanitarian crises unfolding. And there was no playbook for it. And there's no playbook for a black swan event. The big question was, how do you deal with it? What kind of leader you are, and how it tested you as a leader. And experts say the answer was basically leadership with compassion. So I think it will be great if we can just dive straight into the panel discussion, and you can start by talking about the challenges that pandemic posed to leaders. I think Radhika and Sandeep, if you can start by talking about how difficult it was to deal with the crisis, and what tested you the most.
So I think for me, this was the first crisis. I've been a leader for about 4 years. I've been heading the organization for 4 years, and this is the first crisis I've led the organization through. So it's the first stint as a wartime leader, so to say. So it was challenging. Although in the markets profession, we are extremely used to volatility because we know that we live in 5 to 7 year cycles, and we are very, very extreme. So we have market ups and we have market downs, and people are naturally very resilient. I think what tested us the most is culture, because I mean, there's always been a belief that culture is on trading floors, it's in offices, it's in seeing each other on floors. And I think being able to lead people without physical presence, as cliched as it sounds, is actually very tough. I think it's the small things. It's doing a meeting and not being able to see who's participating and who's not participating. It's not being able to sense body language and things like that. So I think that was a complete readjustment. But as I say this, 1 year at the end of this crisis, we recorded our best financial year. And some fortune in our industry also, but I think we recorded our best financial year as a firm. So when this discussion of going back to office happens, I keep telling the team, clearly work from home works. And I think what the crisis has shown me is that human resilience is far bigger than any crisis.
Sure. Sandeep, what has your experience been?
Yeah, so we are from the pharmaceutical world. So one advantage we had is the purpose of business, as in is an essential service, and medicines have to be manufactured. So I think that way we had certain advantage to motivate people, but it was a huge crisis. We all know that, and initially the insecurities are very high because we have around 10,000, people on the field on sales job, and they're not doing any field work for months, so they start fearing will we lose jobs, for example. So I think the very first thing you have to do is reach out to people, assure them that we'll all sail through it together, and try to see life through, being in their shoes. So just being more connected with the grassroots, which is, I think, extremely important in our business, that was something which we reached out. And once that was kind of taken care of, I think things were okay. We obviously realized, like everybody here, that business still went on. It's not that when we were not calling on doctors, sales kind of came to zero. And for months, we had sales still going on. So we also learned a lot of things. One was resilience of people, which Radhika spoke about. And and I must also say, this was a time when I felt very inferior because the smallest of the grassroots people was going to work and I was not. And they just showed more courage than a lot of C-suite people. So I think that was something which I learned, and it was a humbling experience.
Sure. Satya, what were the clients asking you in terms of leadership?
I think the first is the clients understood everything that we were going through because they were going through it themselves. Having said that, I think there were immediate challenges that we needed to orient towards. So even if we were working on something with them which had a 5-year outcome, I think there was stuff that we needed to make sure was on the right track in the 60 to 90-day period. And I think that meant that we reorient our teams to focus on what's important here and now, even if that means away from any commercial considerations, for example, to get through this. And like Sandeep said, a lot of these are priority industries that are keeping the world going, whether it's pharmaceuticals or other essential services. So I think playing a role in making sure that those supply chains didn't drop was probably number one.
So Santosh, a lot of people had to change their leadership styles, change their personal operating models. How did you deal with the crisis?
See, we always, and I firmly believe that we are in the people business. So we may be in automotive sector or financial, in any sector, but I think this crisis or the pandemic brought about the true spirit of being in the people business. And that really helped me personally also to look beyond the business objectives and then first look at people, because mostly in the second wave, actually in the first wave, we had some heads up from Europe, being a part of a large organization, that yes, this is coming in and India may also get into this lockdown stage. We had some learnings from there. But in the second wave, I think it came so fast and we had to readjust our businesses and our people, because it started affecting a lot of near and dear ones within the company, within the families. And therefore, I think for us, we had to reprioritize the business and immediately shift into much more people focus at this point of time. And frankly, it was a matter of 60 odd days. And now when we see it's already coming back, the people are resilient, as the panelists mentioned, and it's the business has come back much more strongly than even the pre-COVID time. So it's a matter of time, and the people prioritization, I think, is a very big learning as such.
So Radhika, how did you change your leadership style? Because everything changed. The circumstances changed, the ecosystem changed, on the client side, or rather on the consumer side, everything changed. You had to do some kind of reset in terms of leadership also.
I think there were two things. And look, I have personally been a big advocate of a more emotional and vulnerable form of leadership well before COVID. I don't buy the myth that to be successful in corporate India, you need to conform to a very, I don't know what you call it, alpha male, think from the head kind of stereotype. I think teams go through, I think anyone who is building a great business as a team is going to go through a lot in their journey. And COVID is just one example of what we'll go through as teams. You'll go through business loss, you'll go through times when your parent company is struggling, you'll go through personal loss. And I think if you don't have honest emotional conversations at work, you don't build effective teams. So I feel that this was a continuation of that style. I think one thing I have learned over the last year and a half is that you need to make people a partner in your problems. So all of us go through low days and we lift each other up. But if you as a leader are going through a problem, like I think mid-2020, we went through a period where financials looked really rough. And I actually opened up the financials of the company to a lot of the leadership, very, very transparently. And When I did that, I realized they had better solutions than I did, and they were more proactive about cost than I could be. So that, I think, was a big change for me, and I'm very grateful that I did that. And I found digital ways to be connected to people.
Sure. Sandeep, in Indian promoter-run businesses, people look up to the promoter for answers.
Right. Yes.
So how did you deal with that when everybody was kind of lost and they were looking up to you for answers? First of all, what was the thinking that you had that you went through, and second, what did you do about it?
Right. So, everybody, as you rightly said, the family culture and values is slightly different than compared to, let's say, an MNC and all that. So here it's more individualistic. People connect more one-to-one. So I think, for us, we just magnified some of the things we used to do. I will not call it change of leadership style during COVID. I would say it's a magnification. So for example, we are more people-oriented than, let's say, system-oriented, if I can say that.
Yes.
So let's say a change in MNC would be extremely difficult, for example, when we want to change let's say, a simple thing like a medical insurance claim. But we used to overcome all that. We look at individual cases, do as it's required. So everybody was like personally taken care of. And most important, I think what Radhika said, I don't think it's a misconception that the boss or the leader should have all the answers. I think we just learned by being more vulnerable to our own teammates. I mean, they open themselves a lot more, and you form a better bridge. So I just being more human in these times, which I think as a legacy, as a family business, we were always there, but it got magnified. And this has helped. I think we are going to have lower attrition as we go forward because people have seen that we stick with them. And we are a much more close family company than before.
Sure, great. I mean, crisis as an opportunity.
Yes.
The second wave was very dangerous. I mean, it took a humanitarian toll. At one hand, you had to deal with business issues, and second hand, CEOs were facing personal losses. So, in terms of what are the best CEOs you've seen do in the second wave? What kind of leadership style did they follow? What advice do you have for companies going forward?
I think more than advice, if I was to draw 2-3 anecdotes from what I saw, I think the best of leaders first gave people their time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was important to make sure that even though the outcome might be the same, I think the way you get there can be different. So if you need a week off in between, take it, right? So I think there was one around just allowing people to take their time. I think the second, and maybe slightly counterintuitively, is it was more inclusive. Because you were able to get people together easier. I think Radhika mentioned the digital connection. But whether it was getting people from across time zones or across even different parts of India together on a call, it became easier. So I thought the discussion was more inclusive, the dialogue was more inclusive, and therefore leaders were able to drive a little bit more through consensus than earlier, where I think established forms of communication and hierarchy were kind of there. And I think the third thing was what I'd mentioned earlier, which is it required sharp prioritization to cut out everything that was not necessary. I think it was hard to justify a trivial activity, and therefore what you were doing was almost definitely the most essential. And therefore it was easier to tell a story of purpose about the activities that we are doing, and release the activities that we took a new lens to and said were actually not that important.
A lot of organizations were tested on this whole purpose focus, and we had mixed results on this. So, what did you do basically? How did you balance the business part and the personal part, and also the workforce problems?
No, firstly, we are also into manufacturing. So we had to go beyond our own employees to the society also. So as a first step for us to react was to see how the society and the ecosystem can be secured around us. So we have villages around us, so we had to set up hospitals, etc. Because that was a need of the hour. You have a luxury brand next door, selling cars to the rich. On the other side, you have such a big calamity. So we were responsible enough to first take care of the society and, by all these hospitals and oxygen, whatever was required at that time. On the other side, our employees also were looking up to us because there was a period of those 2 weeks where everyone wanted help. And I think what we did is from the management team, each one of us was part of a group, a Threema group or a WhatsApp group, to try and help each one with our own personal connections, whatever we could do to help them, their family members. And this was never part of any standard SOP in the company. But they could never imagine the leadership, trying to help them with a medicine or with a bed or with maybe trying to get an ambulatory support, or even doctors trying to support them in the consultation. This moved people, and in our experience, we have seen the emotional connect of our own team members have grown significantly with the company, with the leadership team. And as and when now that's the call to come back, and when our productions are back, we are seeing productivity at a very high level. As I think also, as you mentioned, we are fairly confident that attrition won't be there, because they have seen the company go beyond the purpose of just selling cars or maybe doing a bit there, but what we did to the society, what we did to our colleagues. So I think this for us was also an experience. It was not planned, but it just came across and we were able to rise to the occasion.
Those 2 weeks were the terrible. A lot of CEOs are telling me this. There were 2 issues. One is basically they had to deal with so much negative news, and second is when you get so much negative news, how do you process it yourself? Radhika, how did you deal with? One is basically your own personal thought process, and second is manage a narrative in the organization, turn that whole negative sentiment into something positive.
No, so I think COVID wave 2 was extraordinarily difficult. I remember a phase and I'm from Delhi, which went through a very rough time. But I remember a phase in late April and early May. Whenever my HR would call me, I almost always knew it was bad news, that someone in the family or someone was affected. I think there are 2 learnings. One is that, someone very wise told me that life's equation has constants and variables. And, you can't change constants. Pi is pi. And I think that was the constant message to the team. But what you can work on is variables. The second thing is that, we do a learning series for our team, and we started this digitally last year, where we call CEOs from different industries, and it's just to give these guys perspective. Like we called someone from Taj Hotels last year, because we were like, you guys work in finance, you have no idea of the challenges of running a hotel business. So in May, we saw that people were struggling with mental health and they weren't talking about it. So we called a mental health professional, and we didn't force anyone to come. We got the maximum turnout and engagement when we had a mental health professional, and we had CIO level people in the organization talking about how they were struggling with dealing with their kids, and we had people in branches in Patna and Nagpur. And it was an incredible discussion. So we're also committed to now having more open conversations on mental health. And that was very eye-opening for me.
Sure. Sandeep, how did you deal with the negativity part?
I think on my personal side, I had to change a little bit of my style, as in I'm not a very extroverted guy, but I had to change that and make sure I talk to people a lot more I used to talk to. And the second part, we had to show a lot of things externally, as in we had to demonstrate certain things. So for example, if somebody's in the hospital, we said we'll get them an ICU bed, and we used to reach out to anybody. All the seniors had kind of stopped working for those 2 weeks, which you spoke about. And our job was just to get beds, medicines to our people. And just a crisis situation where we all had to just make sure that business can wait, but lives and those things cannot wait. So we all focused on that, and eventually that's behind us.
So Satya, did a lot of CEOs reach out to you during those crucial weeks and they asked different questions?
I think during the absolute peak, I think most people were involved in helping their organizations through their medical needs. So I think it was disproportionately focused inward for each company on taking care of that. Having said that, I think it was also a time where everyone was more accessible, because you never know who's actually going to be able to do you a favor. Actually, I work in healthcare, and I think every time we needed help with access to medical facilities or any such thing, I think CEOs were actually very available and willing to help. So I'd say it's the reverse that happened, at least in that peak.
Sure. So how did you deal with it, Santosh, in terms of, one personally, and second, you have to arrange so many things for people, and there's a constant barrage of negative news coming at you?
I think in these times, we had to celebrate people's discharges also. You know, what used to happen is there was some of our colleagues who were very critical. In fact, we lost very close colleagues of ours, and the organization is rallying around trying to get things. At the same time, we had positivity. We had positivity of some people getting well. They were coming back home, and we used to also communicate this to the to our employees and saying, hey, these guys are now better. It's not as bad, and I think we can overcome this together. As such. On the other hand, I think we had to be in touch with the families of those affected because they were under severe stress. Many of them were all in hospitals, and we had to still take care of their loved ones at home because the full family may have been admitted for the same reasons. So I think it was, but what we realized, and the biggest mantra is no amount of communication is more in this time. So you can do a Teams call, a Zoom call, almost every day. You can speak to your teams, you can discuss with them. And it all works. So we just increase the level of communication within the company, sharing this, and also the real factor for that employee that, hey, there is some set of I will not be alone in this fight. If tomorrow I am infected, there is a set of team members who will rally, who will try their best. Of course, they may not be successful, but at the same time, that was, I think, a very big emotional support to the full family. And it's not only us. Frankly, you know, we are hardly a 1,000 member organization in Pune, but we have some 4,000-5,000 people working in our dealerships across India. So we extended this to them. They helped us. Some of our colleagues were in Delhi, for example, because they were working from home from Delhi, and they wanted some stuff. So they came in, they pitched in, and I think even post now, the first thing we did once we were coming out is to vaccinate not only the employees but contractors, dealer staff, their families, and I can be proud to say we are almost 100% vaccinated. The dealer staff is 90% vaccinated. So that's the stakeholder management, I think, as a learning for us.
I think one of the good things that happened is companies became employee plus. It's just not employee who they are involved with, but the larger stakeholders, be it leaders, be it other people. Radhika, how did you become, how did you transform into an employee plus kind of organization?
No, I think it's such an important point he made because, you know, you can't be an empathetic organization inside and not be one outside. So we are a consumer-facing organization. We also deal with people's money. Sometimes it's stuck in crisis. There are issues around transmission. People have loss. One thing we decided in April and May, which was very contra to our industry, is that we are not going to launch any new products. We can't have a situation, and there were a lot of new product launches in the MF industry at that time. We can't be asking our employees to call our distribution partners and say, please give us more business. The only reason they should call people is to check in on their well-being. I mean, I could not justify that call. We do distribution and investor engagement events. We decided we were not going to have conversations around investing in April, May. So we actually had a speaker from the armed forces come and talk to investors and distributors and their families about how to get through these times. So even in our consumer and distributor initiatives, in fact, in our annual report, we are profiling distributors and investors who've done good work in these times. So it has to be 360 degrees. Empathy has to be 360 degrees. It can't just be internal.
But Sandeep, you know, one of the things that as a leader you have to do is balance long-term goals with short-term results. That's important. And that to do it in a way that it's good for an organization and people in a people-friendly way. How did you deal with that balance?
I think, to be honest, we never came to a situation where whatever we were doing could impact, let's say, long-term profitability or something like that. So I think for us, I mean, I didn't go through that kind of crisis. So during this time, I didn't have to feel anything like that, very honestly.
As we are going through the crisis, I think a lot of people have started to think about restarting the business. How are you making sure that when people come back, it's a very humane organization, it's ready, it's a very safe organization? If you can talk to you can share your experience in terms of what clients are doing.
I'll borrow a few themes from what I had said earlier. I think first is giving people the time. If they're not ready to travel, then there's no compulsion. If they're not ready to meet, there is no compulsion. If they're not ready to work just yet, there's no compulsion. I think several people are recovering from an episode of going through the virus. If they want more time to recover from not only the physical but mental effects of it, please take it. So I think the first is giving time to people to come back. I think the second thing is actually having a set of working models which are what I would call non-standard versus 2020. The standard now, but they're, if you want to continue to work from home, for example, it's okay, even if it was something that required travel previously. It's okay if you want to work 3 days a week and not the other 3, so on and so forth. So I think it's okay if you want to take 6 months on and 6 months off, so you call it ramp on, ramp off. So I think having different models and having the conversation on what suits you best given the life stage by which you're coming back into work is probably the second thing that I've seen work.
Sandeep?
No, I think as Satya rightly said, first I think those old rules have kind of vanished, and not because people are forward-looking. I think we just realized it, and most of people are forced to. So I think there's no compulsion now to come to office every day, for example, and I think this will stay for a long time. And giving people space. I think there are some people who want to go and travel. Like I had some people go to Colombia and quarantine themselves and then start working. But there are some people who don't want to come to office, and both are okay, basically. And I think few things have to be top down. For example, getting vaccinated, not just for yourself, but your family. All that kind of we are driving down from top down. But all others, I think we are flexible. As long as they want to, when they want to come, as long as they want to come, we are good with it.
So are we moving towards a hybrid workplace? A lot of people a lot of CEOs are polarized in this issue. Where do you stand, Radhika?
So we did a poll of our employees, and for regulatory reasons, we have always been a 100% work from office workplace. 75% of our employees said they want a hybrid model. And so we actually moved in December after wave 1 to a hybrid model. We cut about 50% of seating capacity in Bombay and some in branches. And we never got to experiment with that because the second wave came. But our intention is we will move to hybrid. So outside of a few regulated functions, people will come in 1 week here, 1 week there. And I think employees are really enjoying it. They're enjoying the flexibility to work from home. One of the guys was telling me, my CFO, now I can spend time with my 3-year-old, aadhe ghante lunch mein, 4 o'clock, 5 minutes for tea. So I think that is working well for us. It's going to save us costs, I think. And, I don't know if we'll move to the gig stage of workers where we may hire people who are 100% work from home, but that is certainly a conversation that is happening also in our offices. So hybrid, definitely. 100% work from home, why not?
So, Santosh, you need people on the shop floor. You need people in the retail chains. What kind of conversation is happening in Mercedes in terms of having a very humane workplace, both on the factory floor and also on the retail front?
So, firstly, coming to Mercedes-Benz India, we have a production plant. So, you need people to work on cars, to produce cars. So, for us, there is also a dilemma because we are all co-located in the same premises.
Yes.
So, we don't want to give out a message that, guys, hey, you guys are doing production, you come every day all the way to Chakan from the city and make cars. And here, there is a set of people in sales, marketing, other common functions who can work at home and, relax. So, we had a dialogue. Now, we have also formed an employee forum directly to get these inputs. We did a research. And so we have categorized into different layers. So one is, permanent work from home. We are even looking into those aspects. Which are those profiles who can permanently work from home? They can come for once or twice in a quarter. Then there is a set of profile who will have to come twice a week. And then, of course, every day, which is the production colleagues, some of them who may have to come every day. Here again, we felt our employees telling us that we need hybrid mode because in between when the 2 to 3 months when we opened up post December to March, when they came to office, they again felt a big sense of belonging to the brand, to the workplace, to the culture. And they said, hey, this we missed, we started enjoying work from home, but then it has its own challenges and we want to meet people. So we said, fine, this 2 days and how to optimize cost because you have buses flying from the city to our plant, you have all that stuff. So these are conversations we still have. What we have assured our team members is because this pandemic is not over yet, we don't know whether there is further waves and what the government regulations are. So we have assured them that right now we are all in work from home mode, but even when things are back to normal, we will be in a hybrid mode. What exactly it will look like, we will co-create with our teams, with them together, so that it's more harmonious in terms of working timings, in terms of how we want to do it. But we have not yet announced the final step because we don't know when and how, considering how the pandemic is panning out.
Co-creation of a workplace, that's a new idea. I think we've run out of time. One last question and a quick answer on that. Key learning during the pandemic in terms of leadership, Santosh.
I would say never let a good crisis go waste. Try to also, one is the human side of business and also the purpose-led, the future side. So never lose sight of your long-term goals. And maybe crisis is the time to push forward some new ideas, which also helps. Of course, not to the market, but at least within the organization, you can also try and do different things, experiment with new things. So, yeah.
Radhika?
I think you can be aggressive in business, yet compassionate with people. It is possible for aggression and compassion to coexist.
Sure. Sandeep?
Yeah, I think it kind of reiterated the fact that business is people, and people are the most important thing. And this was a great time that we saw that in action. Honestly,
Satya?
I think when you have a purpose, you probably don't need to steer as much. And when it's a genuine purpose, I think people find their own driving force.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thanks for spending some time. It was a great panel. Really loved having you here. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks.
A big thank you to our panelists and Vinod. Moving on to the next set of awards. Our next winner is Nilima Divi, Director on board Divi's Laboratories. Stepping in as a second-generation entrepreneur and gaining the confidence and trust of her colleagues is an achievement she is very proud of. Congratulations, Nilima. Our next winner is looking to disrupt the insurance industry and make it more transparent by offering hassle-free access to policies. How does he plan on doing it? By offering a brand that is identified with innovation, superior customer experience, and service. Please join me in congratulating Varun Dua, founder and CEO, ACO General Insurance. Our next winner says that the best advice he ever got is Karmanye Vadikaraste Mapaleshu Kadachana. You can't control outcomes. Focus on doing the best in everything you do. Join me in congratulating Abhishek Gopalka, Managing Director and Partner, Boston Consulting Group. Our next winner is Ashneer Grover, co-founder and CEO, BharatPay, a lending and payment startup. When he's not working on his company, he's an active investor with a portfolio of approximately 24 startups and 2 venture capital funds. His investments range across industries like fintech, gaming, health tech, beverages, and more. He believes that if one can generate genuine trust among stakeholders, one can achieve tremendous outcomes. Congratulations, Ashneer. Be frugal in activity, aggressive in action, and sustainable in spending. This is the mantra that our next winner has used to make his company one of the world's top 5 brands in the wearable segment. Drawing inspiration from Jeff Bezos, he is focused on creating a seamless experience and building an aspirational brand. Congratulations, Aman Gupta, co-founder, Boat. Running asset management companies has been dominated by men, but that's about to change. Breaking the glass ceiling is Radhika Gupta, MD and CEO, Edelweiss AMC. She is proud of leading a team that thinks big, fights hard, and has achieved a lot of firsts despite being a younger AMC. Congratulations, Radhika. While most businesses took a hit during the pandemic, our next winner recorded a whopping 300% growth for his business. He did this by trusting and standing by his people. On day 0 of the lockdown, Licious housed 600 people from their processing center in hotels to make them feel safe. The winner is Vivek Gupta, co-founder Licious. Our next winner is Amritanshu Khaitan, Managing Director, Everready Industries. He says his greatest achievement is successfully diversifying an iconic battery brand into the lighting and electrical segments. He believes that if you have grit, determination and persistence, you will always make it through to brighter days. Congratulations, Amritanshu. Moving on, our next winner is consistently working towards increasing access to justice and championing the cause of women in the legal profession. She believes that integrity is what you do when no one is watching, a trait she learned from her father. Congratulations, Nandini Khaitan, partner, Khaitan & Company. Our next winner is the founder of Vedantu, a leading online tuition platform. An achievement that he is most proud of is introducing the category of live classes and helping it go mainstream. He also believes that one should always optimize for long-term happiness and success. Congratulations, Vamsi Krishna, co-founder and CEO, Vedantu. Now, as many of you know, this is the first time that the Economic Times is conducting the 40 Under 40 award ceremony virtually. We miss having you with us in person. So what we did was this. We asked our winners what they learnt about leadership during the pandemic, and here's what they had to say.
To me, compassionate leadership is two things. Understanding your people as complete human beings and not just as employees who come to work. And then actively creating an environment where everyone can truly thrive. Compassionate leadership, therefore, comes from deep empathy, frequent and open communication, clarity in the vision around the organization culture you want to create, and then aligned, purpose-driven action towards the organizational goals.
Compassionate leadership, I think, is the need for the hour. Organizations which have to succeed need to have leaders who are compassionate. And to me, compassionate leadership is about having a three-dimensional view of your employees, of your team. Because when an employee comes to work, he or she is not numbers. They have a lot of different things going on in them, the personal constraints, their goals and objectives, their career path, etc., etc. So for me, compassionate leadership would mean how I can blend their personal constraints, their career path, their goals and objectives into my organization's goals, objectives, and blend this all to ensure successful deliverables for my employees, for my team, and successful deliverables for my organization.
My grandfather, when he set up the company, he set a very strong ethos of service and giving back to the farmer communities, because he believed that they are the reason that we've had all the success that we've had so far. This ethos or this culture has actually anchored my thinking and my leadership journey so far. Well, at least till COVID hit. I believe that to have real social impact, we need to be deliberate and operate through institutions with clear long-term goals. But this belief really got challenged in the current crisis. Now it was all about how quickly I could respond to support and help my friends and colleagues in need, however inconvenient or risky it was to me personally. It wasn't about establishing trust to work on social indicators, be it malnutrition, sanitation, whatever they might be. But it was about what I could do here and now and mostly it was small individual efforts that were needed rather than grand gestures or eloquent strategies on development.
I think the true outcome of compassionate leadership is a born-from culture like a well-run sports team. In my own personal example, towards the closing of our financial year, our accounts head with a few other accounts employees contracted the COVID infection. To my pleasant surprise, a few people who were not from accounts background stepped up to the responsibility without any intervention, volunteered for it, and took the financial closing beautifully. We welcomed our executives post the closing who were themselves surprised at how we could do it. It gave me a lot of pride that people volunteered to help each other without any intervention, without anybody asking for help.
Last year, I saw multiple instances where not just leaders, but people at every level demonstrated compassion. There are a lot of things which come to my mind, but I'm extremely personally very proud about one initiative which we as Vedanta were able to take, which was the Help India initiative. So first and foremost, we obviously scrambled and did whatever we can do for our own people. But we realized that we have a responsibility towards overall ecosystem and community in general. So we created a fund and we also mobilized this so that we can help students who have lost both their parents or an earning member so that their studies and their education don't suffer. And we are mobilizing this in collaboration with the leading organizations of the country. So I'm personally very, very proud about this. And yeah, that is one example which comes to my mind.
So I think the whole thing regarding honesty and empathy, which drives compassion, is something that you can actually experience with our delivery partners a lot. And that's actually what drives a lot of the brand too, because they are the ones who carry the brand on themselves 24/7. And I think there was this example where, there was this partner who was delivering to somebody's second or third floor, building, right? And so they went and got her and delivered it over there because they were slightly older people, they couldn't come down. And when he was coming down, right, he basically, by the time he went to his bike, etc., there were people standing in the balcony and they saluted him. And when this delivery partner was actually narrating that story to me and the team at some point in another forum, it just is one of those most goosebumpy moments that you can really have while going ahead and building businesses.
We have 20 more winners to felicitate. So let's continue the ceremony, shall we? Our next winner is Harshil Mathur, co-founder and CEO, Razorpay. They process about $40 billion in annualized payments with a network of over 5 million businesses. It is no surprise then that they turned unicorn last year. He's proud of the fact that Razorpay has been able to create a significant impact on society and on the payments ecosystem. Congratulations, Harshil. Our next winner is a firm believer in trusted, long-term partnerships. Success to him stems from being trusted by his team, partners, and investors. In his own words, I win when others around me win. Please join me in congratulating Mukesh Gulraj Mehta, Senior Managing Director, the Blackstone Group. Our next winner is the co-founder of Unacademy, an edutech platform where 2.5 billion minutes of learning happens every month. Inventing things or doing things in a way that has never been done before is his life motto. The winner is Gaurav Munjal, co-founder and CEO, Unacademy Group. As the vice chairperson of the Nalli Group, Lavanya Nalli is the first woman to take on a leadership position in the family business. She believes that it is important to be comfortable in your own skin, be curious, and push yourself to reach new heights. More power to Lavanya. Welcome to our next winner, who is proud to have made a difference in the lives of others. He founded a trust to help underprivileged girls attain education, new opportunities, and a chance at a better life. Chirag Gandhi, Joint MD and co-CEO Axis Capital, is not only a good business leader, but also a good Samaritan. Next up is Satya Pratipati, Senior Partner at McKinsey & Company, who believes that success is about bringing new ideas to life. An achievement that he is very proud of is the sustained relationship shared with clients and colleagues over a span of 15 years and counting. Congratulations, Satya, as you continue to scale new heights. Our next winner's success mantra entails coaching a team to be happy and having a mindset to be the best in whatever they do. He has undertaken the responsibility of caring for two underprivileged girls. One of them aspires to be a pilot and the other to serve in the defense forces. Clearly, he is the wind beneath their wings. The winner is Vikram Rai, Country Head, India and Indonesia, GE Aviation. Our next winner believes that real success is the ability to impact millions and transform their lives towards a better future through the power of technology. Ankush Sachdeva is the co-founder and CEO of ShareChat, a homegrown social network that turned unicorn earlier this year. Being the youngest winner on the list this year, he is proud of building a world-class internet company out of India. Congratulations, Ankush. Our next winner was part of the core team that raised $20 billion for Jio in a short span of time with investors such as Google, Facebook, Intel Capital and others. He believes that success is a journey. It's about striving to be the best version of oneself. Congratulations, Saurabh Sancheti, Chief Financial Officer, Jio Platforms. Our next winner has been instrumental in transforming infrastructure financing in India. He believes that success is the ability to create something meaningful for the greater good. The winner is Harsh Shah, CEO and Executive Director, IndiGrid, India Grid Trust. And just a quick reminder, if you're logged on to Twitter or Facebook, use the hashtag ET40UF. Now, the pandemic and lockdown has been compared to a black swan event across the world. One of the biggest challenges that leaders had to face during this last year was keeping people motivated. We spoke to some of our winners and asked them how they tackled this formidable challenge. Here's what they said.
The pandemic has single-handedly destroyed every notion of normal. As a result, the ways we motivated people earlier don't necessarily fit the bill. Recognizing that people are struggling due to the lack of boundaries between home and work, health concerns for themselves and their loved ones, the complete loss of control and the great uncertainty, and yet having to go on, has been a big leveler across the organization. It has sparked several open conversations about mental health. And that has been one of the most important steps we have taken during this time as an organization. As a result, I believe we are becoming more empathetic, open-minded, and developing the muscle to prioritize our work in a way that sees all the roles we play and the emotions we have faced as people in this pandemic. We have worked hard to care for our people, to be more inclusive, and to ensure that our people feel safe and heard, which I believe has gone some way with motivation during these terrible times.
I think if your core purpose goes ahead and allows for people's lives to be significantly better, which is what Dunzo is able to do. We are able to make sure that users are able to stay safe at home. We are able to make sure that delivery partners who might not have any other way of earnings are able to go ahead and make their daily wages. And merchants who potentially suddenly did not have any walk-ins into their store are able to go ahead and run their business because 60-70% of their order volume comes from Dunzo now. I think that's a massively big purpose. And I think when teams end up recognizing that, it ends up creating, ends up creating motivation and momentum regarding the business, which is over and beyond anything that one could do.
We at Adani Group are fortunate because our businesses have been always driven by a larger purpose of nation building. Over time, the drive of catering to critical demand gaps and thus playing a small role towards the larger purpose of nation building has become an inherent part of the organizational DNA. In times of crisis such as world faces today, we as a unit have naturally felt the need to step up and do more. Proactive measures taken by the organization in support of India's COVID fight back has also inspired our people to be resilient and persevering. From keeping the essential services and supply chain running in the first wave of COVID to procuring critical medical oxygen from different parts of the world, creating parallel healthcare infrastructure for the society at large, immunizing and supporting our workforce and their families in the second wave has not only augmented our faith in each other, but also galvanized our people to do more.
I think one of my biggest learnings over the last 1 year has been to highlight the importance of the right culture and the right mission-oriented team in a company. I think over the last 12 months, we have seen unprecedented challenges in our business. First, when the COVID lockdown happened, for about a quarter, our business could not continue because most of it was under non-essentials e-commerce. But our team very quickly, in a matter of few weeks, launched new categories, redesigned our supply chains to make sure that we could continue our business. Not just this, our teams also figured out a way to help out our users, our women entrepreneurs, small businesses to continue their livelihood during that quarter. We trained and educated our women entrepreneurs to make masks at home so they can sell them to make some money. We also gave them out small loans so that they can again keep food on the table in their households. We helped out our small businesses change their manufacturing to categories that have started to work during lockdown times. And there are many other examples.
The single biggest learning in this is that life is very uncertain. Business environment is very uncertain. So whatever you have to do it now. Be it making that phone call to a friend, catching up with an old colleague, or working for your organization, whatever you have, just do it now. Don't defer anything for tomorrow. Business and life both are very uncertain.
I realize that purpose plays such an important role in everything we do, in motivating us, inspiring us, and giving us that feeling of contentment and satisfaction about what we're doing. It's not just about work, right? I spend so much time on a plane or in meetings that now I'm sure many of us realize isn't required. And Everything I do now, I first ask myself, what is the purpose? Why do I need to do it? Does it really matter? This has allowed me so much more time to do things I love at work or with my daughters. I've had so many unforgettable moments with them in the last year, however constrained we might have been physically. And for that, I will always be grateful.
I hope you're having a great time as we step into the concluding segment of the award ceremony tonight. Our next winner created an integrated health ecosystem that served over 5 million Indians during COVID. Success to him is leveraging technology to make outpatient healthcare accessible and affordable to every Indian. We wish him and his venture, PharmEasy, every success. Please join me in congratulating Siddharth Shah, co-founder and CEO, API Holdings. Our next winner is responsible for expanding the procurement footprint of Coca-Cola to new areas of business and creating value by forging strong external partnerships. She believes that if one takes care of people and leads by example, then results will follow. The winner is Sabha Sharma, Chief Procurement Officer, Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages. Next up is Shweta Shroff Chopra, an equity partner at Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas and Company. Shweta is spearheading the mental health program at the law firm. Building awareness and normalizing conversations around mental health issues in the legal profession is an achievement she is most proud of. Congratulations, Shweta. Our next winner is Nilanjana Singh, a senior partner at the law firm AZB & Partners. She is a role model to young women pursuing this challenging profession. Nilanjana will surely pave the way to a time where there isn't only one woman on the deal table. Congratulations, Nilanjana. Our next winner lives by a simple mantra that helps him stay grounded, stay humbled by everything and proud of nothing. Please join me in congratulating Sandeep Singh, Managing Director, Alchem Laboratories Limited and co-founder, Blue Tribe Foods. Now, did you know that the concept for Godrej Maxi Milk was born in a pub in Tel Aviv? Well, our next winner is responsible for setting up Godrej Maxi Milk, taking the idea penned on a tissue paper to a full-fledged business now. Now, that's an achievement. Please congratulate Sandeep Singh, CEO, Animal Feed and Godrej Maxi Milk, Godrej Agrovet. Our next winner has never been afraid of taking risks. At the age of 23, straight out of IIM Ahmedabad, she decided to turn down a pre-placement offer from a global investment bank to set up a cosmetics business. Today, Sugar is a cult favorite makeup brand amongst millennials with a bright future ahead. Please join me in congratulating Vinita Singh, co-founder and CEO, Sugar Cosmetics. The next person on our list is Yogesh Singh, partner and national co-head of corporate practice group, Trilegal. Yogesh says that the best advice he ever got is life and the profession will throw puzzles and mysteries at you to solve. Try and shift the experience of stress to an experience of excitement. Our next winner takes pride in sticking to his values of authenticity, compassion, and ingenuity. His success mantra is simple: be happy and content in life. The winner is Mohit Tandon, co-founder, Delivery. Our final winner is someone who has actively contributed to the consumer internet revolution in India. He has worked alongside many stellar entrepreneurs and played a pivotal role in their success. Akshay believes one should never lose humility in life and work and always treat people with respect. Please join me in congratulating Akshay Thanna, partner and managing director, TPG Growth and the Rise Fund. And with that, we've come to the end of today's show. Congratulations to all our winners. Once again, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Mercedes-Benz A-Class, and thank you all for joining us. We hope to see you in person next year. Now, until then, stay safe, wear a mask, and whenever you can, get vaccinated and help people around you get vaccinated too. It's been a great evening. Thank you and good night.